The Battery in Charleston, South Carolina, shimmered under the March 2025 sun, its harbor glinting like a sheet of polished glass. Cobblestone streets wound past antebellum mansions, their wrought iron gates guarding secrets as old as the city itself. At Le Jardin, a chic cafe nestled among pastel townhouses, Margaret Balagan sat alone on the patio, her silver hair catching the breeze. At 60, she was a portrait of refined grace. A cream silk dress, pearl earrings, and a leather-bound copy of The Art of Joy open beside her untouched tea. Her hazel eyes, framed by faint lines of grief, scanned her phone, a flicker of loneliness, betraying her composed exterior. Across the street, Derek Douglas leaned against a lamppost, his sharp jawline softened by a calculated smile. 38, tall, with piercing blue eyes and a tailored blazer that masked his empty bank account, Derek was a man who turned heads and broke hearts. For 4 years, he'd lived off women's wealth, spinning tales of love until their accounts were drained, and he vanished. Margaret was his latest mark, and he'd studied her for weeks. Her Sunday ritual at Le Jardin, her Hermes bag, her unguarded gaze, they screamed opportunity. Her late husband, Richard Balagan, had left her millions from his real estate empire, a fortune Derek intended to claim. He crossed the street, his stride casual but predatory, his smile a weapon honed by practice. "Excuse me," he said, his voice warm as a low-country sunset. "I couldn't help but notice your book, The Art of Joy, one of my favorites." Margaret looked up, startled, her fingers pausing on her phone. "Oh, really?" she said, closing the book gently. "Not many people your age care for philosophy." Derek chuckled, sliding into the chair across from her without asking, as if the space were his by right. "I'm an old soul, I guess. Derek, by the way." He extended a hand, his grip firm yet gentle, lingering just long enough to feel deliberate. "Margaret," she replied, shaking his hand. His eyes held hers, and she felt a warmth she hadn't known since Richard's death 5 years ago. Too genuine, perhaps, but she dismissed the thought. "I'll be honest, Margaret," Derek said, leaning back, his gaze unwavering. "You have this presence, something magnetic. I'd be honored if you'd let me buy you another cup of tea." Margaret's cheeks flushed, a spark igniting in her chest. "Well," she said, a smile creeping onto her lips, "I suppose I can make time for one more." Over the next hour, Derek wove his spell. He listened as Margaret spoke of Richard's foundation, her charity galas at the Gibby's Museum, her dreams of revisiting Paris. He shared fabricated tales, a childhood in Savannah, a failed non-profit that taught him resilience, a search for real connection in a shallow world. His stories were seamless, tailored to her longing for meaning. By the time they parted, Margaret felt a connection she hadn't known since Richard. Derek handed her a slip of paper with his number, his smile disarming. "I'd love to see you again, Margaret. No pressure, just two kindred spirits finding their way." She clutched the paper, her heart fluttering. "Thank you, Derek. I'll think about it." That night, in his cramped North Charleston apartment, Derek poured cheap whiskey and reviewed his notes. Margaret Balagan, 60, Estime net, worth 20 manors. Daughter, Clara, 32, lawyer, no close family. He grinned, the predator's thrill coursing through him. She was hooked, lonely, wealthy, and ripe for the taking. All he needed was time. Margaret lay awake in her Battery mansion, its chandeliers casting shadows across marble floors. Derek's smile lingered, a flicker of hope in a life dimmed by loss. Her mansion, with its grand staircase and ocean views, felt emptier each year since Richard's heart attack. Charity events filled her days, but nights were silent, the laughter of guests fading into solitude. Derek's attention felt like a lifeline, a chance to feel alive again. Their romance bloomed swiftly. Derek took her on walks through White Point Garden, magnolias perfuming the air, and cooked candlelit dinners in her gourmet kitchen, his charm filling the mansion's hollow spaces. He listened to her fears, loneliness, aging, the void Richard left. "You deserve happiness, Margaret," he said one evening by her fireplace, his hand on hers. the flames casting shadows across his face. "I want to be the one to give it to you." Tears welled in her eyes. "Oh, Derek, I don't know what I've done to deserve you." He smiled, his sincerity a mask. "You've given me purpose, Margaret. You make me want to be better." Margaret introduced him to Charleston's elite, galas at the Gibbies, brunches at Husk. Derek charmed them all, his wit disarming even the most jaded socialites. But not everyone was swayed. Clara Balagan, Margaret's daughter, watched him at a gala, her lawyer's eyes narrowing. At 32, Clara was her father's daughter, pragmatic, sharp, with a bob of dark hair and a no-nonsense demeanor. "He's too smooth, Mom," she said later, her voice low in the mansion's library. "Nobody's that perfect. What do you even know about him?" Margaret laughed, waving her off. "You're too suspicious, Clara. Derek's wonderful. Can't you see how happy I am?" Clara's jaw tightened, but she dropped it. Her relationship with Margaret had been strained since Richard's death. Clara blamed her mother's grief for pushing her away. She didn't trust Derek, and she wouldn't let it go. Evelyn Harper, Margaret's best friend, shared Clara's unease. A retired journalist with gray curls and a sharp mind, Evelyn studied Derek. At a patio dinner, her instincts prickling. "He's too good to be true, Maggie," she said, sipping rosé. "Nobody's that charming without a catch." "Evelyn, please," Margaret snapped, her tone sharper than intended. "Just be happy for me." Evelyn sighed, her reporter's mind already working. She'd seen men like Derek, predators cloaked in charisma. She began digging, contacting old sources, searching for traces of Derek Douglas. 2 months in, Margaret's life felt transformed. Derek was a constant presence, his attentiveness banishing the mansion's silence. He suggested joint investments, offered to manage her foundation's finances, and floated ideas for a shared business, a boutique hotel perhaps, leveraging Charleston's tourism boom. Margaret, blinded by love, saw his ideas as devotion, not manipulation. She agreed to meet his financial advisor, a vague figure who never materialized, and transferred small sums to secure their ventures, nothing she'd miss, but enough to test her trust. Then, a change. Margaret grew tired, her energy sapped despite her joy. She craved odd foods, pickles, ice cream, grapefruit at midnight. Her appetite shifted, and she dismissed it as stress from gala season. Evelyn, ever vigilant, insisted on a doctor's visit. "You're not invincible, Maggie," she said, her voice firm. "Get checked out." Reluctantly, Margaret agreed. At the Medical University of South Carolina, Dr. Sarah Ellis ran routine tests, assuring her it was likely nothing. A week later, a call summoned Margaret back. In the sterile exam room, she clutched her handbag, her pulse quickening. Dr. Ellis entered, her expression a mix of shock and caution. "Mrs. Balagan, you're pregnant. 8 weeks along. It's highly unusual at your age, but the tests are clear." Margaret laughed, then froze. "Pregnant? That's impossible. I'm 60. Menopause was years ago." "It's rare, but it happens," Dr. Ellis said. "Hormonal anomalies, late ovulation. It's a medical outlier. We'll need more tests, but congratulations." Margaret drove home in a daze, joy and fear colliding. A baby, at 60. It felt like a miracle, a second chance at motherhood. She'd never had with Clara, whose birth had been overshadowed by Richard's ambitions. She told Derek that evening, her voice trembling as they sat on her veranda, the harbor breeze cool against her skin. His eyes widened, a flicker of panic quickly masked by a beaming smile. "A baby?" he said, pulling her into his arms. "Margaret, this is incredible. I've always wanted to be a father." Inside, Derek's mind raced. A baby complicated everything. Attention, scrutiny, a tie he couldn't easily cut. But it also bound Margaret to him, her wealth within reach. "This is a sign," he said, kissing her forehead. "Our love is making miracles." Margaret's fears eased, her heart swelling. They agreed to keep the pregnancy secret for now, citing health concerns and Margaret's age. But Charleston's gossip mill was relentless. At a charity luncheon at the Francis Marion Hotel, Margaret's glow sparked whispers. "Are you expecting?" a socialite teased. then gasped as Margaret's blush confirmed it. Good heavens, Margaret, at your age? The room buzzed, and by evening, the news was out. Reporters camped outside her mansion, their cameras flashing as they dubbed her Charleston's Miracle Mom. Social media exploded with hashtags. Miracle Margaret, baby at 60, some praising her, others speculating about the dashing stranger by her side. Derek leaned into the spotlight, giving interviews as the devoted partner. Margaret's my everything, he told a local news anchor, his voice thick with rehearsed emotion. This baby's proof love conquers all. Privately, he grew tense, the media's glare a threat to his carefully guarded past. He began meeting with Samantha Reed, a former victim turned accomplice in a dive bar in North Charleston. We need to speed this up, he told her, his voice low. The kid's drawing too much heat. Samantha, a wiry woman with a smoker's rasp, smirked. You're slipping, Derek. Told you not to get sloppy. Just keep the others quiet, he snapped. No one talks. Evelyn's investigation gained traction. Using old journalistic contacts, she uncovered a trail. Bank records under aliases, women in Savannah, Atlanta, and Miami who'd lost fortunes to a man matching Derek's description. She tracked a pattern, charm, love, financial partnerships, then disappearance. One woman, a widowed heiress in Savannah, had lost $2 million before Derek vanished. Evelyn compiled her findings in a manila folder, her hands shaking with urgency. She confronted Margaret at the mansion, the folder on the coffee table. Maggie, he's not who you think, she said, her voice steady but pleading. He's a fraud. Look at this. Bank records, emails, victims. He's done this before. Margaret's heart sank, her hand resting on her belly. You're wrong, Evelyn, she said, her voice trembling. Derek loves me. He loves us. Read it, Evelyn urged, pushing the folder forward. For your sake, and your baby's. Margaret took the folder, her fingers trembling. Clara, who'd been quietly investigating Derek's background, arrived moments later, her own evidence in hand, a dossier of inconsistencies in his nonprofit claims. Mom, listen to Evelyn, Clara said, her voice firm. I checked his records. There's no Derek Douglas in Savannah, no nonprofit, nothing. He's a ghost. Margaret's world tilted, the folder heavy in her lap. The seeds of doubt, planted by Evelyn and Clara, began to sprout, setting the stage for a reckoning that would unravel Derek's lies and test Margaret's strength. The Charleston sky was a bruised purple as May 2025 settled over the city, the air thick with humidity and the scent of blooming jasmine. Margaret Balagan's mansion on the Battery stood like a fortress of old money, its white columns gleaming under streetlights, but inside, the atmosphere crackled with unspoken tension. At 60, Margaret was 8 weeks pregnant, a medical anomaly that had turned her into Charleston's most talked-about figure. The media had dubbed her Miracle Mom, their cameras a constant presence outside her iron gates, their headlines a mix of awe and speculation. For Margaret, the pregnancy was both a joy and a burden, her body straining under the weight of a miracle she hadn't anticipated. But her heart, buoyed by Derek Douglas's love, clung to the belief that this was fate, a second chance at family, at life. Derek, 38 and ever the chameleon, played his role flawlessly. By day, he was the doting partner, escorting Margaret to doctor's appointments, charming her friends at galas, and posing for paparazzi with a smile that masked his calculations. By night, he met Samantha Reed in North Charleston dive bars, his nerves fraying as the media spotlight tightened. Samantha, a wiry 40-year-old with a smoker's rasp and a grudge against the world, was Derek's secret weapon, a former victim turned accomplice who'd traded her dignity for a cut of his scams. You're losing your edge, she'd said last week, tossing back a shot of bourbon. This kid's gonna blow your cover. Not if we move fast, Derek had replied, his voice low. Margaret's eating out of my hand. Another month, and we'll have her accounts wired. But the cracks were forming, and Derek felt them. Evelyn Harper, Margaret's journalist friend, was digging, her questions too pointed at dinners. Clara Balagan, Margaret's lawyer daughter watched him. Like a hawk, her silence more dangerous than accusations. And the pregnancy, a wild card he hadn't planned for, had thrust them into a public arena where anonymity, his greatest ally, was impossible. Margaret, meanwhile, was blissfully unaware, her days filled with Derek's attentiveness and the quiet thrill of her growing belly. She'd transformed a guest room into a nursery, painting it a soft yellow and ordering a mahogany crib from a local artisan. At night, she lay awake, her hand resting on her stomach, imagining a child who'd fill the mansion's empty spaces. Derek's presence made it real. He'd kneel beside her, whispering to her belly, his voice tender. "Our little miracle," he'd say. And Margaret's heart would swell, blind to the predator behind the mask. But her body told a different story. The pregnancy was taking a toll. Fatigue that left her breathless, dizziness that struck without warning, and a persistent ache in her joints. Dr. Sarah Ellis, her obstetrician, was cautiously optimistic but firm. "This is high risk, Margaret," she said at a checkup, her eyes scanning test results. "Your age, your blood pressure, we need to monitor you closely. Stress could complicate things." Margaret nodded, but stress was unavoidable. The media frenzy had escalated, with reporters shouting questions as she left her mansion. "Who's the father, Margaret? Is it true you're engaged?" Social media buzzed with tonsure and miracle Margaret, some posts hailing her as an inspiration, others dissecting her mystery man. Derek leaned into the attention, giving interviews that painted him as a devoted partner. "Margaret's my everything," he told a Post and Courier reporter, his eyes glistening with rehearsed emotion. "This baby's proof love conquers all." Privately, he was unraveling. The interviews, meant to cement his image, drew scrutiny. A blogger in Savannah linked his name to a fraud case, forcing him to scrub his online presence. Samantha was restless, demanding a bigger cut. "I'm not going down with you, Derek," she snapped at their latest meet, her nails tapping a chipped bar counter. "Get the money or I talk." "Keep your mouth shut," he hissed, his charm replaced by a cold edge. "We're close. She's transferring $500,000 for the hotel project next week." The hotel project was Derek's latest ploy, a boutique inn he claimed would secure their future. He'd presented Margaret with glossy mock-ups, a fake business plan, and a sob story about wanting to build something lasting for their child. Margaret, trusting, had agreed to fund it, scheduling a meeting with her financial advisor to liquidate assets. "It's for us," Derek had said, kissing her hand. "For our family." Evelyn Harper's investigation was closing in her downtown apartment surrounded by files and coffee mugs. The retired journalist pieced together Derek's past. She'd found 3 women, Savannah, Atlanta, Miami, who'd lost millions to a man matching Derek's description. Bank records, obtained through a hacker contact, showed transfers to offshore accounts under aliases like David Drake and Daniel Dunn. A photo from a Miami gala, grainy but unmistakable, showed Derek with a widowed heiress who'd later filed for bankruptcy. Evelyn's hands shook as she compiled the evidence, her gut screaming that Margaret was next. She wasn't alone. Clara Balagan, working late in her law firm's King Street office, had her own dossier. Using legal databases, she'd uncovered inconsistencies in Derek's nonprofit claims. No tax filings, no registered entities. A background check revealed no trace of him in Savannah before 2020. "He's a ghost," she told her paralegal, her voice tight. Clara's distrust wasn't just professional, it was personal. Margaret's blind faith in Derek felt like a betrayal, a reminder of the distance that had grown since Richard's death. Clara wanted her mother back, but first, she needed to save her. The tension peaked at a charity gala at the Gibbes Museum, where Charleston's elite gathered under chandeliers, their diamonds glinting like stars. Margaret, radiant in a sapphire gown, clung to Derek's arm, her pregnancy a subtle curve beneath the fabric. Derek worked the room, charming donors with tales of his upcoming hotel venture. But Clara was there, her eyes locked on him, and Evelyn lingered by the bar, her folder of evidence tucked in her purse. Clara cornered Margaret in a quiet alcove, her voice low. "Mom, you need to listen. Derek's not who he says. I've checked, his nonprofit doesn't exist. His Savannah story's a lie. Margaret's smile faltered, her hand tightening on her clutch. Clara, stop. You've never liked him. He's building a future for us, for your sibling. He's building a scam, Clara snapped, her frustration spilling over. Wake up, Mom. You're smarter than this. Margaret's eyes flashed with anger. You don't get to lecture me, Clara. I'm happy. Can't you let me have that? Clara stepped back, hurt but resolute. I'm trying to protect you. You'll see. Evelyn tried next, approaching Margaret as the gala wound down. Maggie, we need to talk, she said, her voice urgent. I have proof Derek's a fraud. Bank records, victims, photos. He's done this before. Margaret's face hardened, her hand resting protectively on her belly. Not you too, Evelyn. I trusted you to support me, not tear me down. I'm trying to save you, Evelyn said, her eyes pleading. Read this, please. She handed Margaret the folder, its weight a silent accusation. Margaret took it, her fingers trembling but didn't open it. I need time, she said, her voice barely audible, and walked away, Derek's arm around her as they left. The folder sat unopened on Margaret's nightstand for days, a ticking bomb in her pristine bedroom. She wanted to believe Derek, to cling to the love that had banished her loneliness. But doubt gnawed at her, fueled by Clara's words, Evelyn's urgency, and her own instincts. Long buried. One night, unable to sleep, she opened it, her heart pounding. The evidence was damning. Bank transfers, emails from other women, a photo of Derek with a Miami heiress, his smile identical to the one he gave her. Her breath caught, the room spinning as betrayal sank in. She didn't confront him yet. Fear of losing him, of facing the truth alone, kept her silent. Instead, she watched him, noting his late-night calls, his vague explanations, the way his eyes darted when she mentioned the future. The pregnancy, her anchor, was also her vulnerability. Dr. Ellis had warned of rising blood pressure, a risk, to both her and the baby. You need calm, Margaret, she'd said. But calm was impossible with doubt poisoning her heart. The media frenzy intensified, turning Margaret's life into a spectacle. A Good Morning America segment featured her story, with pundits debating the ethics of late-in-life pregnancy. Tabloids speculated about Derek's motives, one headline screaming, Miracle or motive, the man behind Charleston's mom. Sati. Attention thrilled Derek, who saw it as leverage, but it also drew unwanted eyes. A Savannah detective, tipped off by Evelyn's inquiries, contacted Charleston PD, and Detective Laura Vance began cross-referencing Derek's aliases. Samantha Reed, sensing Derek's precarious position, acted on her own. She leaked a doctored email to a local gossip blog, suggesting Margaret had hidden assets from her late husband's estate, painting her as a scheming heiress. The leak spread, tarnishing Margaret's reputation among Charleston's elite. At a brunch, a socialite whispered loudly, I heard she's not as innocent as she seems. Margaret overheard, her face burning, and left early, the folders, weight heavier in her mind. Clara, enraged by the leak, doubled her efforts. She traced the email to an anonymous server, suspecting Derek's involvement. He's playing dirty, she told Evelyn over coffee, her laptop open to financial records. I found a $10,000 transfer from Mom's account to an offshore LLC last month. It's got his fingerprints all over it. Evelyn nodded, her own findings grim. I spoke to a victim in Atlanta. She lost her life savings to him. Same MO, love, promises, then nothing. We need to get Margaret out before he bleeds, her dry. Their plan took shape. Confront Margaret together, with Clara's legal evidence and Evelyn's victim testimonies, and push for police involvement. But Derek was one step ahead. Sensing Margaret's hesitation, he proposed marriage at a candlelit dinner, a sapphire ring glinting in his hand. Let's make it official, he said, his voice velvet. You, me, our baby, forever. Margaret's heart raced, torn between love and doubt. She hesitated, the folder's contents flashing in her mind. I need to think, she said, her voice trembling. Derek's smile tightened, a crack in his facade. "Don't take too long, love," he said, his tone softer but edged with warning. That night, Margaret sat alone, the folder open before her. She read every page, her tears staining the paper. The truth was undeniable. Derek was a liar, a thief, a man who'd preyed on her heart. But the baby, her miracle, complicated everything. She needed strength, not just for herself, but for the life growing inside her. She called Evelyn, her voice breaking. "You were right," she whispered. "I need your help." Evelyn arrived within the hour, Clara in tow. They sat in the mansion's library, the folder between them, and planned their next move. Detective Vance would be looped in, and Margaret would confront Derek, demanding answers. But Samantha's shadow loomed, her loyalty to Derek a wild card neither Evelyn nor Clara anticipated. As dawn ascended the stairs, Derek watched from the shadows, his plan teetering on the edge. Margaret, bolstered by Evelyn and Clara, was no longer the lonely widow he'd targeted. She was a woman awakening, her strength forged in betrayal, ready to reclaim her life. The Charleston summer of 2025 draped the city in a humid haze, the Battery's mansions shimmering like mirages under a relentless sun. Inside Margaret Balagan's grand estate, the air was heavy with betrayal. At 60, Margaret was 12 weeks pregnant, her miracle baby a beacon of hope and a source of fear as her body struggled with the high-risk pregnancy. The man she'd loved, Derek Douglas, was a fraud, a con artist whose charm had nearly cost her everything. The folder of evidence from Evelyn Harper and Clara Balagan lay open on her nightstand, its pages a map of Derek's lies, bank transfers, aliases, and broken women across the South. Margaret's heart ached, but her resolve hardened. She wasn't the lonely widow Derek had targeted. She was a survivor, and she would protect her child. Derek, sensing the shift, doubled down. His marriage proposal, rejected by Margaret's hesitation, had rattled him, and the media frenzy, Miracle Margaret trending nationwide, threatened his anonymity. Reporters camped outside the mansion, their questions sharper now. Is Derek Douglas hiding something? A Savannah detective's inquiry had reached Charleston PD, and Detective Laura Vance was closing in, cross-referencing Derek's aliases with fraud reports. Samantha Reed, his accomplice, was growing erratic, her leaked email tainting Margaret's reputation and stirring Charleston's gossip mill. Derek needed to act fast to secure Margaret's wealth before his house of cards collapsed. Margaret, bolstered by Evelyn and Clara, planned her confrontation. They met in the mansion's library, the folder between them, as Detective Vance joined via video call. "We've got enough to arrest him," Vance said, her voice clipped. "Fraud, wire fraud, identity theft, 3 states, 6 victims. But we need your testimony, Mrs. Balagan, and any financial records you can provide." Margaret nodded, her hand on her belly. "I'll do whatever it takes. He's not getting away with this." Clara, her eyes fierce, added, "I found another. Transfer $50,000 to an LLC last week. It's him, Mom. We can trace it." Evelyn, ever the journalist, pushed for speed. "He's desperate. Desperate men do stupid things. We need to move before he bolts." The confrontation came on a sweltering July evening. Margaret waited in the living room, the chandelier casting shadows across her sapphire dress. Derek arrived, his smile faltering as he saw her expression, cold, unyielding. Clara and Evelyn stood nearby, their presence a silent wall of support. "Derek, we need to talk," Margaret said, her voice steady, the folder on the coffee table. He tilted his head, feigning confusion. "What's wrong, love? You look upset." Margaret placed the folder before him, her hand steady despite the tremor in her chest. "I know everything. The other women, the money, the lies. Evelyn and Clara showed me. Bank records, emails, photos. It's over." Derek's face froze, his charm cracking. He recovered quickly, his voice smooth. "Maggie, this is ridiculous. Someone's feeding you lies. I love you, us, our baby." "Don't," Margaret snapped, her voice rising. "Don't lie to me again. I've seen it all. Savannah, Atlanta, Miami. Women you bled dry. You're a thief, Derek, and I want you out. His facade shattered, his eyes cold. You think you're so innocent? You wanted the fantasy, Margaret. I just gave it to you. Clara stepped forward, her lawyer's voice cutting. You're done, Derek. The police have your records. Leave now or you're arrested here. Derek laughed, bitter and sharp. You'll regret this, all of you. He grabbed his jacket and stormed out, the door slamming behind him. Margaret collapsed onto the sofa, tears streaming as Evelyn wrapped her in a hug. You did it, Maggie, she whispered. You're stronger than he ever knew. But Derek wasn't finished. From a seedy motel in North Charleston, he and Samantha plotted retaliation. Samantha, furious at the prospect of losing her cut, hacked into Margaret's foundation email, leaking forged documents suggesting Margaret had embezzled funds. The story hit Charleston's gossip blogs, then local news. Miracle Mom or money launderer? Balagon's dark secrets. Socialites whispered at brunches, and Margaret's invitations to galas dried up. The betrayal cut deeper than Derek's. Lies, her reputation, a cornerstone of her identity, tarnished. Margaret's health faltered under the stress. At a routine checkup, Dr. Ellis frowned at her blood pressure. It's spiking, Margaret. Preeclampsia is a risk. You need rest, no stress, or we're looking at preterm delivery. Or worse. That night, Margaret woke gasping, a sharp pain in her abdomen. Clara rushed her to the hospital where monitors beeped and nurses moved swiftly. You're stable, but close call, Dr. Ellis said. Bed rest, Margaret. No exceptions. Clara, guilt gnawing at her for pushing the confrontation, stayed by her side. I'm sorry, Mom, she said, her voice breaking. I just wanted to protect you. Margaret squeezed her hand, their first real connection in years. You did, Clara. You and Evelyn. You gave me the truth. The scandal exploded nationally. Good Morning America ran a segment, pundits debating Margaret's fall from grace. Derek, emboldened, gave an anonymous interview to a tabloid, claiming Margaret had manipulated him, using her wealth to trap him. The lies stung, but they also galvanized Margaret. From her hospital bed, she authorized Clara to release the folder's evidence to the press, countering Derek's narrative. The Post and Courier ran a front-page story. Charleston Conman exposed, Derek Douglas's trail of deceit. Victims from other states came forward, their stories mirroring Margaret's. Samantha, seeing the tide turn, betrayed Derek, contacting Detective Vance with a deal. Evidence for immunity. She provided emails, burner phone records, and a ledger of Derek's offshore accounts. Vance's team arrested Derek at the motel, his charm useless against handcuffs. You don't get it, he spat as they led him away. I gave her what she wanted. Margaret, recovering at home, faced the media storm. With Evelyn's guidance, she gave an exclusive interview to a trusted journalist, speaking from her veranda. I trusted the wrong man, she said, her voice steady. But I'm not a victim. I'm a survivor, and I'm fighting for my child and every woman he hurt. The interview aired, resonating with viewers, and thought your miracle Margaret shifted from scandal to inspiration. Clara's legal work sealed Derek's fate, tracing the LLC transfers to his accounts. Evelyn's victim network grew, women connecting through shared pain. But a shadow lingered. Derek's parting words, "You'll regret this," and a cryptic note found in his motel, hinting at a connection to Richard Balagan's business. Was it another lie, or a truth Margaret wasn't ready to face? As August dawned, Margaret on bed rest prepared for the trial. Her bond with Clara deepened, their shared fight healing old wounds. Evelyn remained her rock, planning a nursery, with soft yellow walls. The baby, her miracle, was Margaret's strength. But the courtroom loomed, a final battle to bury Derek's lies and reclaim her life. The autumn of 2025 painted Charleston, South Carolina, in hues of amber and crimson, the Battery's live oaks, swaying gently over cobblestone streets. Margaret Balagan's mansion, once a fortress of solitude, now hummed with quiet purpose. At 60, Margaret was 16 weeks pregnant, her miracle baby a symbol of hope after months of betrayal and scandal. Derek Douglas, the con artist who'd nearly stolen her heart and fortune, was behind bars, awaiting trial. The media, Storm, Miracle Margaret, had shifted from gossip to admiration, thanks to Margaret's courageous interview exposing Derek's fraud. But the battle wasn't over. The courtroom loomed, and with it, the chance to secure justice not just for herself, but for every woman Derek had deceived. Margaret, on strict bed rest after her preeclampsia scare, found strength in her growing bond with her daughter Clara and her friend Evelyn Harper. Clara, the pragmatic lawyer, had become her fiercest ally, her legal work tracing Derek's offshore accounts to ensure his conviction. Evelyn, the retired journalist, had built a network of Derek's victims, their stories fueling Margaret's resolve. The nursery, with its soft yellow walls and mahogany crib, was ready, a beacon of the future Margaret was fighting for. But Derek's cryptic note, hinting at a connection to her late husband Richard's business, gnawed at her. Was it a final lie, or a truth she'd yet to uncover? The trial began in September, Charleston's courthouse a stately backdrop to a media circus. Margaret sat in the front row, flanked by Clara and Evelyn, her navy dress concealing her pregnancy's gentle curve. Derek entered disheveled, his charm replaced by a hollow defiance. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Elena Torres, laid out the charges: fraud, wire fraud, identity theft, and emotional abuse across 3 states. Margaret's testimony was the cornerstone. She took the stand, her voice steady despite the weight of eyes, reporters, victims, Charleston's elite. "He saw me as an easy target," she said, her gaze locked on Derek. "He manipulated my trust, my love, my hope. But I'm not a victim. I'm a survivor." Derek's defense was weak, his lawyer claiming he was a misguided entrepreneur who loved Margaret. But Torres dismantled it, presenting bank records, victim testimonies, and Samantha Reed's evidence: emails, ledgers, burner phones. Samantha, granted partial immunity, testified against Derek, her raspy voice cutting through the room. "He planned every move," she said, avoiding Derek's glare. "Margaret was just the biggest fish." The courtroom's pivotal moment came when Derek took the stand, a last-ditch effort to sway the jury. "I cared for Margaret," he said, his voice cracking, a shadow of his old charm. "Her husband, Richard, he was my mentor years ago. He taught me business, then cut me out. I just wanted what was mine." The claim stunned Margaret, her mind racing. Richard had never mentioned a protege, but the timing aligned. Derek's age, Richard's early deals. Was it true, or another manipulation? Clara, quick to act, dug into Richard's old records post-trial, finding no trace of Derek. "It's a lie," she told Margaret, her voice firm. "He's playing on your guilt. Don't let him." The jury deliberated for 2 days, returning with a verdict: guilty on all counts. Derek's face crumpled as the judge sentenced him to 12 years, with restitution to victims. Margaret exhaled, a weight lifting. Outside, reporters swarmed, but she faced them with grace. "This was never just about me," she said, her voice clear. "It's about every woman who trusted too much and fought back. We're stronger than our scars." The trial's aftermath was bittersweet. Margaret's reputation, tarnished by Derek's leaks, began to recover, her interview resonating with women nationwide. Charleston's elite, initially cold, sent tentative invitations, but Margaret declined most, preferring quiet evenings with Clara and Evelyn. The note about Richard lingered, a loose thread she chose to leave untied. "Some truths don't matter," she told Evelyn. "What matters is now." Margaret turned her pain into purpose, launching True Voices, a foundation for victims of fraud and emotional abuse. From her mansion's study, she and Evelyn planned legal aid, counseling, and workshops to spot manipulation. The Foundation's first event, a November gala at the Gibby's Museum, drew hundreds, including Derek's other victims, their shared stories a tapestry of resilience. Margaret spoke, her pregnancy now visible, her voice unwavering. "We're not defined by what was taken," she said. "We're defined by what we build." Clara, once distant, became Margaret's partner in healing. Their late-night talks, often over tea on the veranda, mended years of strain. "I was so angry at you," Clara admitted one night, her eyes wet, "for shutting me out after Dad. But I see you now, Mom. You're unstoppable." Margaret smiled, squeezing her hand. "We're unstoppable together." The birth came in December, earlier than planned. Margaret's blood pressure spiked, forcing an emergency C-section. Clara and Evelyn waited anxiously as Dr. Ellis delivered. A boy, Gabriel, small but strong, with dark hair and a cry that filled the room. Margaret, weak but radiant, held him, tears streaming. "Welcome, Gabriel," she whispered, naming him for strength and protection. In that moment, every lie, every tear, felt worth it. Gabriel brought joy to Margaret's days, his first smile, a light in her world. The mansion, once silent, echoed with his coos and Clara's laughter as she played aunt. Evelyn, ever present, helped with feedings, her own regrets softened by their makeshift family. True Voices grew, its workshops reaching women across the South, and Margaret wrote a memoir, Charms and Truth, which topped bestseller lists. She spoke at events, Gabriel often in the front row, his toddler giggles a reminder of her why. Clara took over the foundation's legal arm, her bond with Margaret a quiet triumph. They never spoke of Derek again, his name a shadow banished by their light. One evening in 2027, as Margaret sat on her veranda, Gabriel asleep in her lap, she looked at the harbor, its waters reflecting Charleston's glow. She thought of Richard, of Derek, of the woman she'd been, lonely, trusting, lost. That woman was gone, replaced by someone stronger, forged in truth and love. "I'm home," she whispered to Gabriel, her heart full. Her story wasn't just survival, it was rebirth, a testament to resilience, family, and the unbreakable bond of a mother's love.